Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to another wonderful Workshop Wednesday. Welcome to our IBM Code Engine 101, Run Your Code Containers and Batch Jobs. So we've got a lot of cool stuff for you all today. First, just to get started, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, so we can all get to know each other a little better. I'm going to go over a few pieces of housekeeping, and then we'll introduce ourselves, give you a little introduction, and then we'll get hands-on with deploying applications to Code Engine today. So feel free to share your name and pronouns, your title and company, or maybe what program you're with, where you're from or joining from. Maybe you're working from home or quarantining, something you love, and maybe a quirk, so something that's weird or different about you. So to start, the link to the slides is listed here. Also, if you scroll up to the top of the chat, I have all of the links listed there for you as well. Everything that we're presenting and going over today, there is a click-by-click slide available with instructions for everything that we're going to do today, in case you want to follow along at home later or share with somebody else that maybe couldn't make it. This is the Code Engine GitHub repository, so we're going to be using sample applications and some different cool stuff out of the Code Engine repository. So if you want to check out the repo and see what other sample applications and tutorials we have, this is where you can do that. And the link that you joined with today to join the Crowdcast, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube or Twitter, one of our IBM developer platforms for the live stream. This live stream recording will live at this Crowdcast URL. So if you want to reference back to it later, or you missed something, or you have to leave early, you can check it out here at the same Crowdcast link that the workshop is happening at right now. And finally, if you would like to follow along and get hands-on with Code Engine, you will need an IBM Cloud account. You can do that by, again, signing up for an IBM Cloud account. This is the link here. Again, it's also in the chat. So ibm.biz, IBM-CE-101-cloud. So I'll introduce myself briefly to all of you. So for any newcomers, welcome, welcome. My name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a cloud developer advocate at IBM. I'm from and currently joining from Detroit, Michigan. Something I love are my dogs. I have a couple of Yorkies. It's a little quieter today because they're locked upstairs instead of scratching on my door, and a cork. So something about me, if you've come before, I have an obsession with tuna salad sandwiches and tuna melts. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to drop them in the chat or DM me on LinkedIn or any other social platform. I'm always looking for recommendations. And I basically judge an entire restaurant based on how much effort they're willing to put into their tuna sandwiches. So that's a little bit about me. I'll pass things over to Doug so he can introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Doug Davis. I am one of the product managers and architects on Code Engine itself, and I'll be hanging out in the chat answering questions as Jenna goes through the demos and stuff.
Very cool. Thank you, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
So as Doug mentioned, if you have any questions at any time, go ahead and there's a Q&A section at the bottom, or you can go ahead and post them in the chat, and he'll be answering any questions you have as we go along. And we'll have some time for Q&A if we have extra questions at the end of the workshop as well. So before we dive in, I just want to introduce some badging. Again, I have more details on each one of the learning courses and badges that I'm going to be recommending here for you all today. But if you're looking to level up your cloud foundational skills, your cloud native application skills, you can do that with the following badges. So the first one I have here is a Cloud Essentials badge. The second one I have here is a Cloud Development Essentials. This is getting a little bit more into cloud application development. And then I have a Cloud Native Development badge. This is getting a little more hands-on, building your first cloud native applications, your first cloud native microservices. Then we have a Cloud Core badge. So this is really going to get you foundational with different IBM Cloud hybrid deployment models, give you a really great foundational introduction to all things IBM Cloud. And then this one too. So especially when we're working with, serverless and containers, it's always good to be familiar with, containers and container images. Docker is a great resource for using for creating your container images using Docker Hub. We also have an image registry at IBM called IBM Container Registry. So this is a great way to get your feet wet, get a foundationals to all things containers and creating your first container images. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. So what is Code Engine? So Code Engine essentially is a fully managed serverless platform. It's going to run all of your containerized workloads. And that includes web applications, microservices, event-driven functions, or maybe you need to run batch jobs. So one thing that's really fantastic about Code Engine is that it will build container images for you. So for instance, I mentioned Docker Hub and Docker creating Docker images with Docker Hub. One thing that's really great about Code Engine is you don't need to worry about that. Code Engine will actually build container images for you from your source code. So if you're not, container image savvy, don't worry, you don't need to be to use Code Engine. All you need to know is, how to push some code to a repository. So what can Code Engine do for you? So why should you be interested, intrigued, excited about Code Engine? So as I mentioned already, Code Engine will pull your source code and create container images for you. Code Engine supports both Docker files and Cloud Native Build Pack. You can store your code in private repositories and push your images to private registries, and Code Engine is able to access them. Code Engine handles and hides all of your cluster provisioning, your configuring, your scaling, and managing your servers. So you don't need to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure. Code Engine is fully integrated into IBM Cloud, so that allows you to take advantage of the full catalog of IBM Cloud services like authentication, secure authentication with App ID, or AI and machine learning models with Watson AI, like adding Watson chatbots, things like that, any of our services. Code Engine automatically scales your workloads up and down, and even to 0 when no requests are active. So this allows you to only pay for the resources that you actually consume. And lastly, Code Engine is built on a set of open source technologies such as Kubernetes, Knative, Istio, and Tekton. So it keeps your applications and your jobs really flexible and portable. There we go. So I'm going to pass things over to Doug. He's going to give you an intro of his Code Engine product for all of you, and go into some cool features and things that we're going to be exploring today in the workshop.
All right, you want to go to the next page? All right, so I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but what I want to do is just touch on some of the things that Jenna did not mention because she's not going to be demoing everything. But one of the key things I want to point out to you guys is out there today, there's lots of different platforms that are available to you to host your workloads. And one of the problems that we noticed was that each platform by itself actually places limits on you, right? So for example, let's say you go to a straight serverless function as a service platform. And those are wonderful little platforms, but the problem is they impose very strict limits, right? Memory limits, CPU limits. Your functions can only run for a certain amount of time before they get killed. And you just don't have that much flexibility, but they're really great for those very small little one-off workloads, right? But then you have other platforms like, say, Cloud Foundry, platform as a service stuff, where they have great user experience around them, and they're for bigger applications rather than just functions. But they themselves are also limited in some sense, right? They don't scale down to 0 in some cases. They don't give you access to more complicated features. And if you try to use a really full-featured platform like Kubernetes, then you lose the flexibility, the usability that you get with something like platforms as a service and Cloud Foundry, or even some of the serverless platforms, right? And so IBM's kind of looking at this, and we realized being forced to sort of choose between these various platforms is a bad and false choice. And that's one of the things that we tried to solve with Code Engine, is to say, look, regardless of how you view your workload, right, whether you look at yourself as a container developer or just a developer who doesn't understand containers, and so all you want to do is push source code out there, or if you're a batch developer or a serverless function developer, all those types of workloads now can be run in one platform, meaning Code Engine, with a single user experience, so you can actually have the same CI/CD pipeline feeding all your different types of workloads into one environment. And we will manage everything for you. That means manage the virtual machines, manage the infrastructure in terms of the underlying componentry like Kubernetes and Tekton that Jenna mentioned. Everything will be managed for you under the covers. All you have to do is give us your application. And you can give us your application in, as Jenna said, as source code, where we'll actually then go and compile it for you into a container image. Or if you already have a pre-built container image, we'll take that just as well and deploy it for you. So the choice is yours. So the point here is to not make you have to learn all the technology on the covers, not expose you to all the complexity, but try to get you as a developer back to where you should be spending your time, which is writing code. And as she said, it's all in the cloud, all managed, fully scalable out to whatever you need. But there is one important point I want to point out here as you sort of look at all the options available. While we talk about a simplified user experience, in particular, meaning we're trying to hide Kubernetes as best we can, If for some reason you need to go around us, maybe we messed up and maybe we hid too much, or maybe you have an existing CI/CD pipeline that already talks Kubernetes, and you just want to do those exact operations except to Code Engine instead of a vanilla Kubernetes cluster, you can do that. Okay, our user experience is great and I love it, but we don't force you to use it. You can use some of the underlying open source technology, APIs, CLIs, whatever you want, to talk to Code Engine. Whatever you want to use to get your job done, go ahead and use it. We just recommend you at least take a look at our user experience because it is a simplified one, and we think you can actually get your job done faster if you don't have to spend your time learning about Kubernetes. Okay, so before I hand this back to Jenna, the only thing I'd ask of you is as Jenna walks through all these demos, pay attention to how little work she actually does. And notice she spends most of her time just explaining what's going on and what she's doing, but she's not actually doing a whole lot in terms of actual work. And that's the point here, is right? Minimal effort to get your job actually done or to get your application actually up and running in the cloud. That's the point of all this. So pay attention to how little she actually does here. Most of it's just explaining stuff to you. Okay, so thank you, Jenna. I'll hand it back to you now.
Thank you so much, Doug. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our dev environment. So just for simplicity's sake, we're going to be doing everything from the UI. So for our 101 session, we're going to be doing everything from the Code Engine UI, so you can see how effortless and seamless it is to use, how helpful and easy to use the UI is. And next week, we're going to be taking a look at the CLI and doing things from the command line and that sort of thing. So what you're going to need in order to do that is, again, the link at the top of the chat. The link is here as well. You are going to need an IBM Cloud account in order to follow along. So you can go ahead and do that with the link provided there. And what you're going to need is you're going to need an IBM Cloud pay-as-you-go account. We have, let me see here, I have it here. Before all the questions come, IBM Cloud Code Engine has a free light tier. We will take a look at that in a minute. Everything that we are going to be doing today and next week as well, you will not, get any charges for. It will all be covered within the light tier. There's actually quite a bit of CPU and memory and requests. I think up to 100,000 requests per month that you can make to your application. But a card is required to create a Code Engine project and deploy your Code Engine application. So it just needs to be on file, but you won't be receiving, you won't end up with any charges or anything. So you'll go ahead and sign up with the VCPI link here. And as you can see here, with the light tier as well, you'll have access to over 40 light plan services. That includes Watson AI, chatbots, App ID, API Connect. We've got a lot of cool stuff. And then, there's some credits and things as well if you want to check out some more upgraded services. Okay, so we're going to start building something. So we're going to deploy our first application to Code Engine. So let me just minimize this, go over here. Okay, cool. Let's just make sure I'm still logged in, didn't get idle. Okay, perfect. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to, at the top here, we're going to type in Code Engine.
Wait, Jenna, so we can't see your command line if that's what you're doing, or if you're in that different browser.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. Need to reshare. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Window. Here we go.
There we go.
There. Okay, there we go. So you're going to type Code Engine into the search bar, and you're going to click on Code Engine service. And it's going to bring you to the Code Engine console here. So as you can see here on the side, we have projects, CLI, some documentation. And so as I mentioned before, we have the always free tier. So you have 100,000 vCPU seconds per month. You have 200,000 gigabyte seconds per month of memory. And then you get 100,000 HTTP requests per month for incoming requests. So you get quite a bit. We're not going to use up, you know, even close to nearly as much as you have for the next today's workshop and next week's workshop as well. So as you can see here, we can jump right in. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create an app from an image. And for myself as a developer, this is really nice because, you know, especially when I first was getting started, container images seemed really scary. So what's really nice is with the Code Engine repository, you have sample code to work with here. So I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to create our first project. So like I said, the first thing we're going to do is create an app from an image. So all I need to do here is click Start Creating. We have the option of choosing application or a job. So if you need to just run a job, you can do that. Applications default, we can already do that. We can update our name here. The next thing is select a project. So I have a project here. If you don't have a project, you can create project. You just need to give it a name. I would recommend, if you go into the Europe, clicking on the Frankfurt region, give it a name. Resource group is default, so that's already set. So I chose a container image, so that's already selected. The image reference we have here, so here we're using Docker Hub to host our image. And our Docker registry, don't need to do anything else. Our listening port, we can change our listening port override if we need to. We don't need to in this case. And I'm going to click Create. As you can see here, we are deploying our application. And as you can see here, so this is our application. This is our Code Engine demo. I just named it. We have it deploying here. As you can see here, if you were watching right here. So here we have the number of instances of your application currently running. So as you can see, we have one instance of our application running. The number of instances of our application we can change. So we can scale, as we mentioned, we can scale up or down, including to 0. And this is just showing, you know, the number of instances. We'll take a look at the stuff down here. To view your application, you can just click Open URL. So you don't need to, you know, fumble and look for the URL of the deployed application. It's already here for you. And this is our deployed application. Let me make it a little bigger. This is our deployed Code Engine application. So this is just our simple Hello World Code Engine application. But as you can see, it really was as simple as a couple of clicks, a 1-2 click, maybe update a name, and we were able to take a container image and deploy it to Code Engine in, you know, taking out any explanations, you know, less than 30 seconds. The next thing I would like to do, here we go. Okay. Okay. So now that you saw how quick and easy that was, we're going to explore some Code Engine features. So I want to come back to our Code Engine. Here's our project. Click back to Code Engine over here on the left. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run a container image the same way we did. But what we're going to do is we're going to update this field here. So I'm going to give you a specific container image to run. So go ahead and type in IBM COM /HMO. So do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a health insurance application and use that as a demonstration to show you all of the some of the really cool features of Code Engine, and we'll take a look at a few more when we meet again next week. So go ahead and type in IBM COM HMO, click Start Creating. Again, we're going to give the app a name. I'm going to just call it HMO. Update this, HMO. I already have my project selected. You all should now already have a project created, so you can just select it from the drop-down menu. We don't need to change anything else. We have container image selected, our image reference here. As you can see too, it tells us the registry access for the image we're using is public. We're actually using our IBM Container Registry for this, this example. And then we can click Create. Close this. So again, we can see this deploying here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So we have one instance of our application running. So if we open our application URL, as you can see here, welcome to My Insurance. So this is our health insurance. Let me see if I can zoom in a little. There we go. Our health insurance application. We have one instance running. Okay. So now we have our project that we named called My Code Engine JWritten. We gave our app a name of HMO. We provided our container image. And then we just left the other configuration options available at set to default, and we ignored those. So as you can see, with just one piece of data, the container image name, we were able to deploy our application. So we're going to take a second to talk about all of the things that we didn't have to think about and the things that we didn't have to do ourselves in order to make this happen. So since this is leveraging Kubernetes, we didn't have to deal with any kube resources directly, no deployments, replica sets, pods, or even containers. We just gave Code Engine our container image name. There was no networking to configure. We didn't have to manually set up an external endpoint. There was no load balancer to create or configure when we scale up our application. Let's take a peek at our live application here. So again, this application is a sample HMO dashboard. One thing I'd like you to notice here, click here. So notice the URL is HTTPS. So we get built-in security by default, just deploying our application to Code Engine. So we didn't have to do anything, already built in, already good to go. So it's a freebie there. Another thing to notice is notice the number of customers. So notice the number of customers and the number of customer records processed are currently set to 0. So from the developer's perspective, you're done, right? We have an internet-facing application that's secure. It will scale up or down and even to 0. And it'll always be ready for requests, and all with just one bit of information, one piece of information, the container image name. So let me go back. You can just chill here for a second. So one of the features that Code Engine gives you is auto scaling. So if we come here, okay. So we're going to actually take a look at Code Engine's auto scaling feature in action by going to a load generator tool that we have. So if you're following along in the slides, on slide 76, we have the load generator tool here. I'm going to open that up here. Okay, so we're going to make some stuff happen, and then we're going to take a look at and talk about how and why that happened. So let me zoom in. Okay, that's better. Let's see if this is zoomed in enough. Zoom in a little more so you can see. Okay, perfect. Okay. So this load generator tool is just for demonstrations. It's not part of Code Engine. We're just using this to send requests to our HMO application so that we can demonstrate the Code Engine auto scaling feature for you. So what's going to happen is the load generation tool is going to generate a load against our HMO application, and it's going to show what happens when we get a lot of traffic hitting it. So let's say, you know, you've launched a new product that's in beta, and then all of a sudden you get a ton of traffic, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, it'll just crash the site, right? Things just aren't maybe the infrastructure is not in place, you know, to handle a large influx. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at exactly how that happens and how Code Engine is going to handle that auto scaling for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our application. We're going to copy the application here, and then we're going to enter it into this where it says, please enter the URL to the service. I just pasted the application from welcome to my insurance application, right? And then I'm going to hit generate load. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to this application. So as you can see here, the number of customers is increasing. So the load generator tool is going to generate a continual load from 1,200 clients for 30 seconds. And each time it hits the application, it'll cause the creation of a new customer. Then we can see that here on the application page as our proudly served customers increases, and we're going to wait for that number to stop changing. So once our proudly serving customers stops increasing, we're going to hit the pause checkbox. I think it's good to say it stopped. There we go. And it's in the corner here. So I know it's a little tiny, but if you look in the bottom right corner here, it says pause. So after it's slowed down and kind of come to a halt, this proudly serving customers increasing, go ahead and click pause. If we didn't do this, we'll ping the server every second, and that'll force the app to never scale down completely because it's always busy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Code Engine console and check out some stuff. So as you can see here, notice that the number of instances is up to 10 now. There we go. So why just 10, right? We have 1,200 clients. Shouldn't it be 1,200 instances? So we're going to take a look at the runtime tab. There we go. So when we look at the runtime tab, we're going to take a look at the concurrency field. right here. So this is the maximum number of concurrent requests per instance, and it can range from 1 to 1,000. Right now we have it set at 100. So because we're allowing 100 current requests, that means that each instance of our application can handle 100 requests at a time. So if it can handle 100 requests at a time, why don't we have 12 instances then, right? Because we have 1,200 clients. Well, we need to look at the maximum number of instances. So you can see here. So we have our maximum number of instances. By default, it has 10 in there. Because remember, we didn't, these are all defaults, right? So it's default set, the concurrency is set to 100, the timeout set to 300. By default, the minimum number of instances is set to 0, and the maximum number of instances is set to 10. So this is why it stopped scaling at 10, right? Without this value, it would have scaled higher. So you can control your costs and avoid runaway scaling if you need to. We're also going to take a look at the minimum number of instances field. So one thing to notice and keep in mind, we've been talking about this a lot, right? Scales down to 0, scales down to 0. What does that mean? So the minimum number when you deploy an application to Code Engine, it's already default set to 0. So you can also control the lower bound of instances too. So if you want one instance to always be up and ready for incoming requests, meaning you don't want any cold start delay, you can change this number to 1. I'm going to keep it at 0 for now. But what this means is when there are no requests coming into the site, as you can see here, it will scale down to 0. So it's already scaled down to 0 just as we started taking a look at these things. So no load, with no load, it's going to scale down to the minimum number. So in this case, it's default set to 0. It's going to scale down to 0 instances of the application when it's not getting any requests coming in. So you get automatic scaling of your application without doing anything. So before we move on, we're going to go back to our application for just a second. So we have this paused here. So we're going to uncheck our pause box. Again, it's in the bottom right. And we're going to unpause the application so that it will update the number of customers and records processed automatically for us. So we're going to go back to the console here. So when the UI decides to auto refresh, you'll see that the number of instances is going to go back to 1. Now we have our application running, but let's say our company has was bought out, or let's say there's a new release. You know, let's say Facebook decided to update their UI for the 15th time, right? So we need to update our application to reflect our new design. So let me go here. Oh, why is this still paused? That's why. Okay. I was like, man, what's going on? Got to uncheck there. And as you can see, it automatically scaled up to 1 instance. So I thought I clicked it, but I didn't. So just move backwards for just a second. So my click didn't unclick, but in doing so, when the page auto refreshed, our number of instances increased to 1. We didn't have to do anything. We didn't need to, you know, I didn't need to manually refresh the page. It did that all on its own. So now that it's auto refreshed and we see that we have one instance of our application, now we're going to take a look at deploying a new version of our application. So if we click on the code tab here, right? What we're going to do is we're going to modify the container image. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify our container. So again, this is our image reference here. This is our container image, registry, namespace, repository tag. So here we have registry, namespace. So we have IBM Container Registry and our HMO image. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in this image reference field. We have IBM com/HMO. I'm going to add a -v2. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is save our updates. But before we do, notice that the number of instances is up to 1 because we unpaused the browser. So let's see. Oh, it went back down. So when it auto refreshes again, it'll go back up to 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to save and deploy our new container image, this v2. So I'm going to click here. Okay, so as you can see here, we have our v1, our v2. We're currently deploying our v2. Okay. And then we're going to click Open Application URL. Okay. And then we will see our updated v2 of our application. And what's I need to finish here. Refresh my internet real quick. It's about the time everybody comes home and gets on Netflix. So what we're doing here is Code Engine is doing a rolling upgrade, and it's going to transition all of our traffic from the old version of our application to the new version of our application when it's ready. So we're going to just wait for this to finish deploying. I think it's having issues with some clusters yesterday, so I think
Try to check to see if it's just you or
not. Yeah.
Hold on. I think the demo gods are not on your side. That's very odd. You can choose it. I don't know. I was going to say choose a different region, but you already have their stuff up and running. That's not good. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's weird.
Oh.
Huh.
I think it's
just slow.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's just something weird because I just deployed another application and it was much quicker. So I think it was just a burp.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as you can see here, we have our new updated UI, new colors, new name, right? So we've just deployed v2 of our application. Now we're going to go back to the console and take a look at the number of instances. So notice that there's 2 instances, right? So this is the old and the new instance. We need 2 during the migration of traffic. And then in a few moments, it'll kill off the old ones since there's no traffic going to it anymore. And then there will just be one instance running. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about Code Engine performing a rolling upgrade. So it's transitioning all that traffic from the old version to the new version of the application when it's ready. So as you can see, the time it took me to tell you that, we're already down to one instance of our application, and it's our new V2. So all the traffic has been rolled over to our V2 of our application. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is revision and traffic. So as you can see here, we're working in the configuration section. So if you look on your left-hand side, there's two options, configuration, revisions, and traffic. We're going to click revisions and traffic. There we go. So in this section, you'll see all of the versions or revisions of your application. So today, this is a read-only list, but very soon you'll be able to use this tab. And by this tab, I'm talking about this traffic right here. So as you can see, we killed off the traffic to our V1 of our application. And all of our traffic, 100% of our traffic is now directed to V2 of our application. So our latest, most current image. So very soon you'll be able to use this traffic tab to do traffic splitting, and you'll be able to control how much of the incoming traffic goes to the latest version. Goes to which revision if you don't want all of it to go to the latest. So for instance, let's say I want to do some A/B testing before we implement a new UI overhaul of my fictional product. I can direct 25% of my traffic to my old version, 50% of traffic to a second version, 25% to a third version, right? I'll be able to designate and control how much of that. Maybe I want to always keep 10% going to 10% of traffic to the oldest version, the first revision of our application, because some people prefer the old UI, right? And I want to keep that as an option for them. So that's something that's going to be coming fairly soon. So I wanted to at least let you see how that works. We've spent a bit of time talking about all of the infrastructure and runtime features available to our application. But remember, we did all of this with just 2 bits of information: an app name that we created, whatever we wanted it to be, and the image location. And that's it. Everything we did is the exact same for any other kind of HTTP application. So if you have just a function, right, with no UI, you can deploy it the exact same way. People can talk to it via your REST API, and it will scale the same way our web application did automatically. So pretty much with Code Engine, if you can containerize it, then we can host it for you. So it's important to note that while in Code Engine today, all interactions are HTTP based, but this doesn't mean that messages over other protocols will also not be supported. In the not too distant future, you'll be able to get events and messages from many producers over other protocols such as Kafka, and those will automatically be converted into an HTTP request and delivered to your application. So your application won't need to know how messages and events arrive. They just need to listen on HTTP. What did we just do? So what we did is we just deployed an application from a container image to Code Engine in 2 clicks. We deployed a V2 of our application with change of a name and one click. We used our load generator tool to check out and demo our Code Engine's auto scaling feature and watch it scale up and scale down to 0. And then we saw our rollover of our application traffic from our first revision to our second revision. So the previous demo is great, but what if the task you want to perform isn't really a web-like application? What if it's more like a traditional task, right? Where it's just a standalone executor that you want to do something like process a batch of data and then just exit. So it's not really sitting there waiting for some incoming request or event to initiate its execution. So for instance, say we're in a hospital and we have hundreds or even millions of patient records that we need to process each night. How do we deal with that kind of a task? So in order to manage that type of task, what we have is we have batch jobs for these types of scenarios. And we're going to take a look at how that works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our Code Engine project. So we have Code Engine projects. This is our project. And then we have our applications. So we're going to click on our project. As you can see here, we can see our summary. We have our applications, our jobs, we have image builds, we have registry access and secrets, config maps. We have our recent activity here. So as you can see, this is the first application we deployed, our Code Engine demo, and this is our HMO application that we just deployed 2 revisions, or 1 and 2 revision of our application. And as you can see here, remember we talked about CPU and memory and how much we're using for our workshops. So as you can see here, we have our current resource allocation. So we have 1 total instance. We're using 1.56% of our CPU quota. We're only using 0.4% of our instances quota. And we're only using 4 total memory gigabytes. So we're using 1.56% of our memory quota. So just a little bit. We're going to use just a little bit next week as well. So what we're going to do here is we are going to, in the menu on the left, we're going to click on Jobs. And as you can see here, oh, I have it closed. So our application has scaled down. So remember, we auto-scaled down to 0. So we're currently not allocating any resources because our web application is not currently receiving any requests, and it auto-scaled down to 0. So you saw it happen just like that. So next, we're going to create a batch job. So we can click on the Jobs tab. Okay, and then we're going to click on Create. So I'm going to just type task for the name. And as you can see here, looks almost exactly the same as creating a new Code Engine application. So I'm going to put task for the name. Now for the image reference here, container image is already selected by default, which is good because that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to, for the image reference, I'm going to type IBM COM. So we're going to be pulling a container image from our IBM Container Registry. It's going to be HMO-task. So same as the other image reference we use, just dash task on the end. And you'll see that the page also, as you can see here, so it's already, we're using a public registry access. You can see that this looks just like the app create page. And that's because that's because for the most part, creating an application and a job are the same. The only difference is that on this page, you won't see any of the auto-scaling options since the job won't scale based on load, like we saw our application. It's not going to scale based on requests. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So we gave it a name. We gave it an image, just like our application. And we can want to click Create and create our job. Okay, and all we're doing here all we did here is tell Code Engine where to find the container image with our executable. Nothing more complicated than that. So like with our application, we left all the other options in their default values. And now that we've defined our job here, so this is our job, our image reference here. So it's important to note that unlike applications, where once you create it, you'll get something running. As you can see here, we didn't have that deploying bar that we were waiting to tell us that it's running and ready to go. So with the job, the first step just defines the job. It doesn't actually run anything yet. So we just created a job. We haven't run it yet. So the point here is that we've defined the job definition, and now we can run it over and over without having to define it each time. Okay, so with our job defined, we're going to go ahead and run it. So if we scroll down here, you can see job runs. This is our job. We don't have any runs yet. And we can create a new job run by hitting the Submit Job button. And you'll notice that you can specify some additional configuration options or override the fields from the job definition we want. So its default number of instances is 1. CPU is 1. Memory is 4. Number of job retries, job timeout. These are all default values. We can also override them. What we're going to do is change the number of instances here to 10 so that it will create 10 instances of our task. So after we've entered 10 into the number of instances entry field, you'll also see that you could have specified an array indices value. So each instance of our job is going to get a unique ordinal value passed in as an environment variable. That way, each one can know its position in the list of instances and can use that to know which portion of the entire piece of work it's supposed to work on. So this value could be something like 1 to 10. As you can see here, it says 1 to 9. Or it could be 1, 3, 5, or some sort of mixture. The point is that we can choose these ordinal values if you only want to run certain ones. So with the rest of the default values, we're just going to hit Submit. Okay. And as you can see here, we can see the status of the running job. And we're going to go back to the apps page here. Okay.
Hit refresh.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Took a second. Yeah, I think my internet's just. So you can, as you can see here, notice that the number of customer records processed is going up. So now we're looking at this value here. That's increasing. And then if we go back and look here, we have 10, as you can see here, we have 10 instances of our job task container running in parallel, and each is processing Each is processing 10% of the records. So each task will run until its work is completed. As you can see here, it says it's succeeded. They've completed. We don't have any that have failed. And the job tasks are processing all of the customer records, and the results are being stored back in our persistent storage. So that's something that we're going to dive deeper into next week as well. We're going to show you how to create your own persistent storage and do some of this stuff with another sample application that we're going to check out some more cool Code Engine features for. So in the meantime, so we go down here. So we have all of our configuration data here. So array indices 0 to 9. As you can see here, we have our number of customers and our number of records. I think my internet is having some issues because normally this number is a lot higher for me. I think everyone's online because it's after work right now. So let's review what just happened. So we created an internet-facing application just by providing the image location. With just that, we got quite a few built-in features. So what did we get? We got an external endpoint, HTTP and HTTPS. So we got that built-in security, load balancer, auto-scaling app based on load, which scales down, up and down, up or down, and even to 0. We have, we also got our rolling upgrade without any downtime. So as you saw, we had both versions, both revisions, revision 1 and revision 2 of our application live and running until all of the traffic was rolled over to our V2 revision of our application. So we were able to perform a rolling upgrade without any downtime as we deployed our new version. Then we created a job, so a non-HTTP based piece of code. So many of the same runtime configurations are available as an app. Obviously, the endpoint-based ones don't apply, like load balancer, external endpoint. And we invoked the job by telling it how many instances we wanted it to run. So as a reminder, notice that for the most part, all we ever quote-unquote configured was the image name. And then for batch job, the number of instances. And that's it. So obviously there are other options available, but with smart defaults, we've been able to get the bulk of our workloads deployed and do very minor, easy tweaks for the others. So I want to just show you, let's see, let me make this down here. Okay. Okay. There we go. So one thing I want to show you, and then we're going to deploy some apps from source code, so I can show you how that works as well. But what we're going to go into more detail and into more depth next week. So stretch your fingers, crack your knuckles, and get ready. You can do everything we just did in the Code Engine console UI from the command line. And everything we just did can be run from the command line in five commands. So we were able to create a new project, create a new application from a container image, run the load generator, create a new batch job, and run the batch job. So everything we just did can be condensed down to 5 scripts. And this is what it looks like. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is deploying an app from source code. So let me go back to my Code Engine project here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, let's pull this here, is I want to show you all. So talking about, you know, images and deploying from images, and you know, maybe you've worked with container images and, you know, you want a place to store them. So I want to show you how you can do that. So if you type in Container Registry at the search bar at the top, you can then click on the Container Registry service. So here is our Container Registry service here. And we have a quick start guide here. So you can click Get Started. And there's a quick start here. So, and again, we're going to be setting all of this up next week and doing some work with our Container Registry and deploying applications to code in from the command line. So what you'll need to do in order for that is you'll need a namespace. So as you can see here on the left, if you click on namespaces, I have a namespace here, but you probably don't have one yet. So if you click Create a Namespace, click Default, you can give it a name. I'll just say Code Engine Demo and Create. Okay. So one thing I want to show you here is, so as you can see here, our repository count is 0, our image count is 0. But we are going to go back to our Code Engine console for a minute, and we're going to take a look at deploying applications from source code. Oops, there we go. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and click on our Code Engine, so you can go out to the main Code Engine console. And where we have our source code here, we're going to click Start Creating. So start with source code, click Start Creating. We already have a sample repository here. And then let me just change the name here. Okay. So give my application a name. As you can see here, we still have our project that we created earlier. And as you can see, we clicked on deploying to source code. So source code is selected, and our source code URL is already here. Now, one thing you can see here, we're going to click Specify Build Details, this button right under here. Right, so under our source code URL, we'll click Specify Build Details. And then as you can see here, we have the code repo URL. Repo access is public. And the branch name that we're going to be deploying is the main branch. But let's say you have, in the repository you work in, you have, you know, different versions. You have a branch that's v2.2 and branch 3.7, right? You can designate which branch you want to deploy from your source repository. If you leave this empty, it automatically defaults to main, but you can change it. The next thing we're going to peek at is the context directory. So this is the path to the source within a repository. Let's say you have your deploying application that's, you know, within your app folder, and, you know, all of your stuff lives within, you know, a nested directory in your repository. You can specify an alternate root folder here. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to click Next. And the next thing we're going to look at here we have our strategy is default Docker file. We don't need to change anything here. So we can click next, but we have options here. We have Docker file, we have our timeout. So this is the timeout before the build run fails. And it gives you, valid time units that you can use. It tells you you have build resources here. So this is the size of the build. This is going to determine how the CPU cores, memory, and disk space are allocated to the build. And a smaller build is less expensive, but typically also slower due to the number of CPU cores. So you can change that here. I'm going to just leave it as it is and click next. And as you can see here, we have our registry server. Okay, so this is the registry server that's a default with the server that I designated the Frankfurt when I created my Code Engine project. As you can see here, our registry access, it's automatic. We don't need to do anything here. We will be doing more with this next week. And then we have our namespace here. So I can select, I have this namespace auto-generated here for me. And then we also have a repository image name. Again, this is all auto-generated, and I can just click Done. And it's updating our registry access there. So as you can see here, we have our image build details now. So we have our image reference, our registry access, a source code URL, the branch name. So we're looking at the main branch. We're not worried about any different root folders. And again, so we have the option, as for instance, if you came to an earlier workshop for a max object detector, that was listening at a different port. So this is something you can designate here. External HTTP requests arrive at standard ports 80 and 443, and they're mapped to the port specified here. So default is 8080, but you can update it with whatever TCP port your code is listening at for incoming HTTP requests. So the next thing we're going to do is click Create. Okay, so our build was created, build was submitted. Okay, checking the image build. Now we're waiting for our image to build. And again, this is our source to image. So this is building a container image from and storing it in our IBM Container Registry from our GitHub repository where our source code lives. So once that is completed, we'll be able to, there we go. Okay. Oh, I might need to, let me just refresh here. Oh, refresh my internet.
Go back up to the top for a sec. Jenna, can you hear me?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you.
Okay, I think I lost it. I lost you for a second. Okay, I had to reconnect. Okay, let me go back. Okay, let's refresh this again.
There we go.
There we go. Much better. Sorry about that. I totally lost internet for a second. Okay, so as you can see, we used our repository code, and we used Code Engine's source to image feature to create an image. So we have one revision of our application. We can open the application in our URL. See here. Hopefully my internet doesn't poop out. Okay, there we go. And we have our live application that we just deployed from source code. So a few things we're gonna look at as we start to wind down here. Again, like we looked at before. So here's our live application. And as you can see, even after it said it was ready, this one instance scaled down to 0, right? So our minimum number of instances is 0. So as we weren't doing anything on our application, it wasn't receiving any requests, our application automatically auto-scaled down to 0 when it wasn't in use. And we did that again from our runtime here. One thing we can do here is we can increase our number of instances to 1. We can click Save and Deploy. So this is going to create a revision of our application. Okay. That should deploy, and hopefully not, the internet can handle it. Deploying one instance, okay. Wait for that to finish. There we go. And remember, we looked at this before. So it's we have, what we're doing is we're rolling over the traffic that we technically doesn't exist right now, but we're rolling over the traffic from the first revision of our application to the second revision. So we rolled over our traffic from here to here. If you click on revisions and traffic, you can see here, we don't have any traffic going to our first revision. It's all now going to our second revision. We can open our application here, which again, nothing has changed. However, our application will now auto scale down to 1 because I changed the minimum number of instances to 1 so that we don't have a cold start in theory when someone goes to this website, right? Because there's always one instance of the application running, so we don't ever have a cold start. And the last thing we're going to look at today, that we're going to look at a lot more closely in a Code Engine workshop that's in progress right now, is our environment variables. So as you can see here, we have some key value pairs that can be used by our running code. We can add environment variables. So if we click Add, where'd it go? Oh, interesting.
What are you looking for?
To add environment variables.
Oh, let's go down. There should be. That's odd. I wonder if your screen is too small or something. That's. There should be a plus button.
Yeah, there was a button here.
Totally messing with you today.
Hold on. It's okay. I like a challenge.
Yeah.
There's usually a button right here that says Add. But if we look at the If we look at the values that we already have here that have been pre-populated, we already have key value pairs for our running code. So CE app is our code engine J written. This is our name of our actual application that we just created. We have our domain here. So this is a domain that was created for our live application. If you look here. And then we have a subdomain here. So these were already pre-populated, generated for us, which is really cool. Just looking for that button.
Yeah, I don't think it's there. I'm asking our UI guys what happened to it because it was there earlier.
Someone did something.
Someone did something, yes. That is not good.
Okay, so there's an invisible button that is normally right here that you can click add. And actually, let me show you. I can still show you. There we go. All right, let me change this view real quick to, oh yeah, you can see it. Okay, good. Okay. So I can show you here. Add environment variables. Okay, so there's this button here. It's open. And when we click on it, we can add, we have a bunch of different options here. So we can add and edit environment variables. We can define them as literal values, reference to full config maps. We can reference to key in config map. We can reference to full secret and reference to key in secret. So let me just go here. You might be like, what did you just say? What does that mean? Okay, so environment variables are just used for configuring data. Like, for instance, let's say you have a machine learning model and you want to make calls to your machine learning model and display that data on your code engine application, right? And you're like, how do I hook these things up? Your model is going to have credentials or secrets and things that you need to input into your application in order to make that request and accept the response. And you need a secure place to put your environment variables so they're not just hanging out in your GitHub repo and can be, you know, scraped or exposed and, you know, have it as a security risk. So you can store your credentials as secrets. Here in the Code Engine console UI. There we go. And you should store your credentials as secrets, not literal values or config maps. So again, we're going to be taking a deep dive into integrating some IBM Cloud offerings and services in a couple of workshops that are in the progress right now. So watch out for those. And we'll get hands-on with these and explore this a little bit more in depth. Let me just go here. Just make sure you can still, okay, you can still see. Sometimes I have to reshare. So we have our live application. So what did we do? We deployed an application from a container image. We deployed an application from source code. We updated our application. We created new versions, new revisions of our applications. We rolled over traffic from our V1 to our V2 of our application. We used our load generator tool to generate a load against our site so that we could see our auto-scaling feature in action. And we have our live applications. So we have our HMO applications, and then we have our Code Engine application from a container image and from source code that we just created. So congratulations to all of you that are still hanging in there with us. what I would like to ask you all to do is, if you would be so kind, actually let me put this in the chat as well. We're not collecting any data from you. Just a quick two question feedback survey. We're not taking your name or your email or any of that kind of stuff, so you don't have to worry about that. If you would like to get hands-on, we're going to be working from the command line next Wednesday, same time, same place. You can register for part 2 of the workshop. Get this for you as well. There you go. And what we're going to be doing, like I mentioned before, we have in the works some code engine workshops where, again, as I mentioned, we're going to be integrating some AI and machine learning models. We're going to be integrating authentication with our App ID service, which allows you to very easily add authentication to your application. And you can add things like Google and Facebook, and we have our own authentication service and creating users using our cloud directory. So we're going to be checking that out as well. I would like to, I think we have a few questions here. I want to see. It looks like we've got most of your questions answered here. If you have any last-minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We have a few minutes, we can answer those for you.
Yeah, the only one thing I want to mention, I did try to answer them all through the chat. The one thing I do want to point out, though, is that as of today, Code Engine is a multi-tenant environment in the IBM public cloud. We are looking at supporting running workloads on remote systems, in particular other clouds or even on-prem, through the use of IBM Satellite, which is a relatively new technology. We're not there yet, but we are looking at integrating with IBM Satellite to make that happen. So look for that in the future. But as of right now, Code Engine is strictly in the IBM Cloud.
Very cool.
And Jefferson, don't apologize. Those are wonderful questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well because I've been checking out Satellite for a while. So I'm excited to get my hands on it once it's there, to start bringing all these things together. So Code Engine will be your one-stop shop for everything. So I'm excited.
Yes, we will be taking over the world one day.
Yes, exactly. We'll say, what? You're using what? Code Engine can take care of that. Code Engine can take care of everything that you're using. One day. So again, thank you all so much for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Actually, let me just see if I have this here. Let me just add this to the chat real quick. Let's see. So if you have any questions that come up in the future, feel free to reach out to us. There we go. Okay. All right, cool. So feel free to send us a message on LinkedIn. We'll also be here again, same time, same place next Wednesday. You can also check out more content on my YouTube channel. So feel free. I usually keep it pretty updated with all my workshops and things and everything. And Doug, I'd like to thank you so much for coming and helping out and answering questions and sharing your wide depth of knowledge with everyone today.
My pleasure.
All right, and we will see you all next week. So stay tuned and have a great rest of your week.